Welcome again to Dialogue Corner in the pursuit of learning and unlearning. Today we are joined by Mr. Mzweleni Mthethwa, discussing the future of finance, the youth's perspective in inflation and economic growth. Bhuti Mzweleni njani?
Ngiyaphila njani?
Siyajabula ukuba nawe namhlanje. Before siqale, we'd like to know ukuthi umunye umuntu ozoyibuza ukuthi why is invited when we're not discussing such a huge topic. Singathi ubani Bhuti Mzweleni?
It's very interesting to note that I am Mzweleni Mthethwa. Grew up in Ishowe. Was born in Mbongolwane Hospital and happens to be born by Manzuza and Mthethwa.
Yeah.
And I grew up in that context, but as I am back on my secondary schooling, I had to move to Ntuzuma in Durban, where I did part of my secondary schooling. Then partially when about to finish my matric, then I went back to Eshowe, then I matriculated there. Then that was my part and parcel of me growing up in different contexts and different settings. I would note that when I was young, my parents separated, then I had to move on with my mother. Then hence that's why you'll find that when I was growing up, I was in Durban, I was in Steng, I was in Eshowe.
So how was that like, moving around with different folks?
I think it made me to be whom I am today, because really made me to not stick in one place. I'm always in a space where I'm willing to accept change and always move on very fast and very quick. Adjusting to environment is always part and parcel of me. So that made me to not hold on a certain aspect. Each time when I'm embarking on a certain thing, as soon as it's done, I'm so quick to move to another project on a less level. That's what taught me to be.
So who would you say that you learned from Gakulu between mom and dad?
I think in many instances, I was with my mom and my grandparents on my mother's side. So I would say those are the people whom I really learned a lot from, given that I only had to meet with my father after I was done with even my secondary schooling and already at a university level. So I met him after schooling. That was it.
So how has academic life been like at university?
University was very interesting because I think what I had pursued was what I really had an interest into. When I grew up, like I said, I used to be with my grandparents. They used to run a few shops. Then I happened to be an entrepreneur at a very young age.
How old?
So I, at,
How
a,
old?
at a grade 2 level, really I would remain in a shop. I would take care of some aspect. Then I think it what made me to want to pursue my studies in a commerce space. Given that at high school I was a science-based person, so I finished high school. I used to be a science learner. Then when I came to the institution, then I joined the commerce stream.
So if I understand, in high school, if you majored in science, it was physics, biology, and life science. So how was the adaptation moving from that and then now have to do commercial subjects?
I think it required enough time for me. If I say enough time, it meant I must work tireless in trying to grasp
To better
simple
yourself.
words. And what was ironic is that when I was in my third level or second level, I started to tutor those subjects, and I happened to be doing very good in my studies because for me, I will have an extra basic book and I will have my studying prescribed books, so that what it meant I must do. So I think I use that time profitably in terms of me trying to grasp and adjust from being a science person and try to look things at a commerce perspective. But like I said, experience was always have been there. It was just an academic or a learning side of it that was not there. I had to learn now to know when I'm doing this, actually, or in accounting or in economics, I'm doing this. That was it.
So would you say that in pursuing what you find as something you've always dreamed of, would you say you found your purpose in life?
I think in that process, I would say, not really, I would say through that I found the purpose. With the,
In
with
doing
the
commercial?
system we are in, you will do what you are doing over and over again. But in that process, you will develop other aspects. Like that is where leadership comes in, because really you have the money. Then what will you do with it? That's what becomes practical. Now you are in a space that you want to be. You are doing what you want to do. Then come aside, what do you do with other people whom are hungry, whom are in difficult situation? What to do to use those resources to assist them. You can't say you must all queue and come and take money, but you have to now come up with other ways. Maybe that is where leadership taps in and come in.
So, what is the one thing that you can give a person in trying to help them without giving them money? What is something that you can give them?
Capacitation is always the best. I would say in many instances, if you give people money, it's like uh, giving a man a fish but not teaching him how to fish. I would say so. So capacitation remains the best, and also trying to ensure that one finds something where he or she is good at, then you try to mold them toward becoming that particular thing. I would say in many instances, if people are suffering in certain contexts, it's very easy to make those particular people grasp what they want to achieve, because they will always have something that they wish to do, but it's just a matter of resources.
So, going back to your academic life, you said on your third year level you were tutoring.
Mm.
Which level are you in now?
Now I'm on my first year for DCOM, Doctor of Commerce in Economics.
Doctorate?
Yes.
PhD?
Yes,
How
yes,
old are
yes.
you, Mzweleni?
No, all I can say, just a born free, 28 there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've done other undergraduate qualifications. Like for instance, I finished matric when I was 20. I was 18 to be.
Uh-huh.
Then I started. I went to a private institution where I did banking. Then after, I did marketing in Richards Bay here. Then thirdly, I did my BCom Business Management and Economics. Then my honors in economics, my masters in economics. Then now in DCOM in economics.
Wow. Um, wow. Shout outs to that, bro. Congratulations. I'm always inspired to meet young people who are doing great things. So, what do you think, as an economist, your role is in society?
Our major role is to predict, analyze, but importantly, is to formulate policies. I think you would recall in our leadership fraternity, we've had an economist. Our former president, Mbeki, was an economist. Then you would see the magnitude he had in terms of making our economy vibrant and also stronger and stronger. A lot was achieved in that given that in that tenure, given that he had a background of in economics and what he needed to do. He knew exactly what to do and what not to do in order for the economy to function. Rather than getting advice then there, he knew basic things that needed to be done in order for an economic perspective to rise and also our economy to start growing at a certain level. I think only under his leadership where in our economy managed to grow over 5%.
So, you spoke about capacities. What's the word? Capacities. What's the word?
Capacitating.
Capacitate. Oh my God, this is terrible. Okay, it's fine. But to me, it was empowering people with skills. I'm correct.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So if we are saying we are against, we are not giving a person money, which is the current economy, we are giving people money for not doing anything. Uh, isn't that us taking their power away, like giving them the 350s instead of allowing them to work for it?
In a economic perspective, giving people 350 is what we call fiscal monetary policy strategy. That is where you are like indirectly giving in people money just to make them to gain buying power and create demand for certain aspect. That is the best strategy that is used when economy is swinging to a certain level and it's down. And what we are trying to do, we are trying to boost an economy. Because I think you've went into shops and you've seen about Boxer, they are creating certain combos and whatsoever. That creates certain demand in the market, and there are firms in the factories which we always want to boost and we always want to create in growing. For instance, if the more combos being sold each month, then it means it creates a certain demand and there must be a supplier. So in an economic perspective, that is what we call government trying. That's why we built schools for years and roads whatsoever. Those are indirect way of saying we are giving people the money in trying to grow the economy.
The way we are talking, someone will say that you are speaking from a certain political party. The way you are supporting your answers.
Not really. Really, if the economics, it's a matter of fiscal and contractual fiscal policy. It's a matter of what do they do. That, and then we decide at some point to take money. That is why you'll have governor increasing the interest rate. In that way, we'll have seen that no, there's too much money in the in the economy. Then we must take it back. Then interest rate increase. Then you find good rate yako wherever you are staying, it increases. Your bond and your car increases. It's a way of managing the financial side of it. That is what we call monetary policies we have in the economic perspective. Not really politics being involved. That's why it's always difficult to separate politics from economics, I must say.
So now that you've mentioned taxes, inflation, collecting money from people, so do you think that the things that happen, they are meant to happen, they are done purposely? These are part of the system. It's designed to control the way that we spend, the way that we live our lives.
Maybe I would say there is what we call a book or a poetry. What a crime! What a system! So as far as you've went through those aspects, you'll understand. We are the price takers. We are not price makers. We are producer. We are not producers. We are consumers. I think that is where organization like BRICS and others comes in, where we happen to be trying to say, let the developing and emerging market countries be the producers rather than consumers. So, in many essence, I would say that is why we are trying to shift the buying power. You will always people here speaking of monopoly, speaking of a lot of aspects, and one person and a few individuals controlling our economy. It's a fact. It needs to be told. And in many instances, if you read in terms of literature in an academic space, you'll understand that each and every country that has been oppressed prior, it needs radically policies at an initiation stage.
Like?
Radical policies at its phase whenever it just attains its freedom. If it fails to do that, it will have institutions which will just kick out certain people, but the norms and the principle, they don't change. It still remains the same. I think at certain level, that is where we are. That is why we see so much outbreak in South Africa of so many. We will hear the land competition, expropriation without competition, and a lot of policies whom people now are raising. That what should have been done, I would say, at a negotiation level and at the first instant. If it was handled correctly, we wouldn't be where we are.
Where are we now?
We're in a space whereby our country is the most unequal country in the world. We are one of those countries, more than 70%. That is the inequality ratio we are moving at.
So in terms of the economy, how many people, the percentage from the 60, is it plus or minus 60 million people that we have? How many people do you think are participating in the economy?
You'll be very shocked that only 7.1 million people whom are participating in terms of paying tax.
7.1.
7.1 million, and 28.3 million is surviving on grants. That is almost 50% of our population.
What could be the cause of that? Is it because people are, they have these expectations from government that you're expecting them to provide instead of, or we have this culture, as you said, we are consumers instead of producing things?
That's why I've said we needed radical policies
From
at
the
our
beginning.
first intake when we're taking the freedom and the democracy. Unfortunately, what many people were focusing on was assuming offices, being ministers, and what so on. But what was left behind was the major issues of how do we make sure that our people benefit into the economy we are into. And you'll find that our counterpart of it happens to be white. They are less than 20%, but they are controlling more than 80% of the land and the resources. And we have to share this 20%. All of us, black, Indian, whatsoever, we have to share that small portion.
But don't you think that's a mentality issue?
No, it's not a mentality issue. Like I said, if you look, this is why racism remains a major issue, but in a different context. In a financial space, that is where you see that racism still exists. Why do I say so? A counterpart of a white fellow at your same age, having even less resources as yourself, when they go to a bank and take a loan, they'll be paying far less interest as yourself. And when are you be forced to pay maybe 3 times or 2 times him because you are being said to be high risk? For what? Just because you happen to be your color and a certain race is holding those institution and is controlling that space.
But it goes back to mentality again, as I'm saying, because what we've seen from black people is that we can't spend wisely. We are failing to spend wisely. Which and everything that we are getting, we understand that for me to look important, I need to spend somewhere lavish, like I buy Gucci, I buy Versace. So that's what I think. That's my opinion.
For instance, that's why I'm saying, that's why we have an economic perspective. What I've been telling is the fact, not what ought to be or what other people they think. For instance, for you, that's why in an economic space we'll have necessary good and we have luxury good. And Gucci would be falling into the luxury good.
Yes.
Those certain goods, they only grow in terms of you purchasing wherever your income increases.
Which is mostly bought by black people.
But the reality says those people who are buying those certain goods, it's because they have more money that they can't use for other aspect. Then for someone who is just earning a normal living and earning a certain amount, will focus on procuring necessary good, of which will be your soap, your Colgate, your whatsoever. Those necessary means for them to survive.
Okay. Going back to government, so why do you think it's important to have taxes?
Tax remains important for the operation of the governance operations, and also in terms of doing government projects. Like say the time I'm saying operations, because you will recall in 1980s our economy went bankrupt. All these multi companies you see being built by other counterpart we have, that money was stolen from our economy and was used to build all those companies. I think that's why we've seen so many reports.
Like which companies?
You know the former. I don't want to be
You can mention
specific
names.
to companies. That's why you'll see our public protector.
Which one? The former?
The former one.
Okay.
this one, not the acting one, the former one,
The former one.
was fired because she tapped into the space which
Oh,
she
yeah.
was saying,
Okay, man.
Absa, you've stolen, you've never bring back the loan you've taken. Multi-choice, you've never bring back the money that was stolen and given to you by your counterpart. Reserve Bank also, you play a role in doing so. People were stealing through you in front of yourself. You were the officials, you were there. So those sensitive topics, they are never discussed.
Who fired the public protector?
But they are where we are because it was Tash, then she was dealing with those aspects. Who fired her? The impeachment happened through the parliament, and it was unfortunate because the speaker who fired her, because it happened under her side, she was wanting our sympathy as black fellows when she was also taken to the same route.
Was it
That
Ngagula?
yes,
Oh,
she
yeah.
was the one, but when she was taken to court, she wanted us now to back her when she did something terrible to her fellow black female whom was rising in a low space. And it was not the same time, it was not the first time, I would say. We've seen so many others that have
So many
undergone
other
a
black
certain
people
process.
taking down other people.
That's what has been happening.
But
Black
don't you
people
think
are
she was
used
sent
to
to
cripple
do that?
other. You've seen what has happened with Judge Stopper. The
Yeah.
only person whom speak the Afrocentric law part of it recently was impeached, and that's what happens. If
By
you've
another
seen,
black person.
yes, if you have seen to be transforming this economy to a certain extent, you'll undergo a process whereby you are crippled or you are warned to stay out of those certain aspects.
Uvusithembekwayo khona iclip yakhe etrendayo ethi inkampani yomuntu omnyama izokwiswa umuntu omnyama. Uma uframewa uzoframe umuntu omnyama. But in this case, I think labantu abamnyama, they are sent. Are
Yes.
they not? Or they are sent, you agree?
Yes, that's why I told you that that's why we have an economy.
Mm-hmm.
Go and look into the funding list of our political parties even now.
Mm-hmm.
One and the same person is funding everyone
All political parties.
and all of them in a certain ratio. Why is that need? Do they all speak one and the same thing? No, they speak different language. But why you do that?
But they have the one parent.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for that insight. Can we proceed on this? I think it's more interesting. Okay.
Yes.
So, when they sent this other black person to fire the other black person, do you think those people, what are the signs should we look for that this person is benefiting?
Really, it's not about the science, I would say. That's why even in politics, people, they become enemies because in the process of fighting for whatsoever struggle that certain people will be undergoing, many people are distracted along the way and they are given other option. I think you'll hear what Malema would say. People were too fast to be leadership. That's what also happened. That is why I was saying so many aspects were left unchecked and undone in a certain aspect. If you look into our policies and whatsoever. So people were too fast to become ministers and president and whatsoever. Then the critical part of how our wealth is going to be shared among us. Our freedom charter said all must share. That's not what is happening. And we look into our financial sector, still remains. Italy is the oldest bank, but you know that they don't have an operating license. They rely on ABSA.
Wow.
Then you will have so many aspects. Even you'll see Sbo had more fire. Do you see it in shops? Do you see it?
No,
Have
no.
you seen it ShopRite?
Very few shops.
Why? Why is the case? You never ask yourself. It's because how many other certain people in different race have started other new things and you find them there. So many of them. Just because of your race, the market will close up for you just because. That's why it's time for us to support one another and have our own businesses. For instance, it's not easy to tap into other spaces just because of who you are in terms of race and whatsoever.
But do you not think that it's part of the education that you are being provided? That the way that we see things, we only think about the now, what I'm going to get now, and then not about the future.
That is absolutely true. Our education is more Eurocentric. This is why you'll find that someone who has done computer science can't even create a software, can't do anything, because they're just sitting on a desk. It makes you to expect to be employed after. It doesn't make you to be really someone who's practical and who can create jobs after. And that's why when our institution, the University of Students, take the strategy of a North of an African thought, some of us as student leaders and as students, we're very happy to say our university is moving at the right direction. And we hope that it won't be just a slogan of transforming same books which are written in English into Zulu. We want the ideology to be African based, and we want our education to be Africocentric, and we also want to see the IKS, the indigenous knowledge, playing part into this. That's why I would say in other instances, it will be very interesting for faculties of humanities and social science to start having people whom are traditional playing part into their faculties and into the indigenous center, indigenous knowledge center. Why? We need to find other ways. Like, for instance, you'll find ukuthi it's always difficult for us to find ukuthi umuntu uyathakatha noma akathakathi mayisuke enama case. We need those people to be professors and teach us how to ukuthakatha happens and how can you quote someone. If once we've done those aspects and we are moving in that essence, it will open so many job opportunities. We'll need to get detective, we need to get professors in those spaces, we need to get people whom will be judges who will understand that context. And that is where I think, even when we speak of, I always hear people speaking much of the law, that it must change, the constitution is not, it's biased somewhere, somehow, is not us, it's not picking us. The only way how that could be done is us capacitating people and also allowing that space to grow, because there is a vacuum there, and you see so many people who say they're African scholars, but they are not really contributing much. What they will be telling you is to say we must stop speaking English or speaking whatsoever. You can't. Me speaking English doesn't mean I am ideologically Eurocentric. You need to change my ideology. Mindset of myself as a person need to change. Then whether I'm speaking English, Sesotho or Zulu, that I'm communicating, whenever you're communicating something that you already know and that is in your head. And you'll be communicating what needs to be done in different languages.
Thank you very much, Brad, for that insight. Moving on to solutions. We had elections yesterday. But from what I've noticed, I was checking out the polls and the result, and they had counted, I think, close to 10% of the vote, and if it's 10%, the total votes were of 1 million. So I'm assuming, because from the people that I've interacted with, most of them do not want to vote. They do not see the need to vote. So I know that we have passed the elections, people have voted, but was there a need to participate in elections?
I
in
think
future as well.
I think really some people were saying this is our 1994, right? Even we as BRICS, we even had an essay competition where we're giving people to write and tell us a story about this democracy. And really it was interesting to see what people were thinking. And I would say, like it or not, This is a year of change. This is a year of generational breaks. Whether NC wins, whether it loses, whether any other parts take over, all you must know, this is a year of generational breaks. Certain generations must move out of certain aspect, whether from the ministerial to wherever, but this is the year I would call it a generational breaks. A new era is about to begin. For instance, if I'll be practical with you, people who took over 1994, maybe 2 years before we were born, today we are in charge, we can now lead. Those certain people will have to exit the office, will have to take over. So many Boniface like myself, who are well educated and who are well experienced, and others in a political space, others they are not educated but they are in a political fraternity. They are very busy there. So those young people, they are ready. If you look different lists that were submitted in for parliament, for different organization, you will see that young people are going to be taking over and they're going to be in charge. So that's why I would say it was very important for the young people to be part and parcel, because other young people, their fellows, are going to be in charge. So they must get a mandate from them.
So which party do you think has introduced or has the capacity to help the South African people in terms of the policies they might introduce if they win?
For me, NC still remains the best. But you know why? We have the best policies, but we still can't use our policies. For instance, I'll be practical with you. Rwanda uses our policies in terms of controlling the immigrants who enters and who lives.
The country?
Yes. We have Mbeki policy, which would have, I can't recall well the terms of that policy. It can control and know who is even in a town that you are into. That's why you will have to notice that many towns, they have one exit. Those aspects were created for a reason.
Okay.
You must know who's in here
and who's not,
and who's coming in and who's new. But unfortunately, the current or our government have failed to execute and to be on par with its policies. We have good policies that we have formulated, that we've written, that if we can implement, would be the best country ever.
And then do you think that we should be giving practical lessons to younger kids for such things, to be able to notice that something that was said, for instance, if you're talking about Boniface, those are people who were born in 1994. But we need to be, do you think that we should provide practical skills for people to notice that something that was said in 2019 is not being implemented now, after 5 years?
I think that's why I would say in that essence, really we don't need to provide certain things. Our education should be enough to provoke your thinking as an individual. You don't really need extra lesson. Our education should be enough in making each and every person to have a certain view on a certain things. So really, that really comes to what kind of an education are we getting? Is it really relevant? Is it really speaking to us? Is it really building us to a certain level? Or it's just billions wasted?
On the so-called best education.
Yeah.
So, if you were to become president today, we are manifesting. So, what is the image of a perfect South Africa that you have? What components would you add if there's something that is missing?
I would say, in my mind, what I call a perfect South Africa, it is South Africa where it's well-established roads, no shakes.
No shakes?
Yes.
Meaning?
Meaning those shakes you see around our townships, they are killing our society because they are taking away hopes from individuals who grow up in those certain shakes. Would be a world-class education, and we need to be smart country. Start to be smart. I must say, COVID did bring something good out of us because a lot needed to be done in making our country to be a smart country. Really, I think you would note we introduced so many aspects. Now we can have our meetings in Zoom, Teams, whatsoever, of which no one will know what for instance, even the institution, if it will have a senate whatsoever, everyone would have to come to one venue and sit and they present. Now life is more simple, it's more easy. You could wake up and get into a meeting, and a lot of other innovative way were introduced. So I would say that is an idealistic country where everyone is free, where everyone has a view to a certain extent, because whenever the democracy is too much, people get to be out of hand. Really, I must say. Really, that is an idealistic country that I hope to see one day, where no one will live of hunger. People will have something to eat day by day. Industries working, we producing rather than being consumers. Our economy booming, doing very well, like our first world countries are doing. That is where I want us to be.
Okay. So when you're talking about education, what would you change or add from what we have?
I would say it goes a long way when I speak of education. Really, our education must agree with you. We have people whom can't be systematic groomed, whom are practically based, and they must be allowed to be taking that route. For instance, look at ESCOM. We had to take so many white people just because we were told they had an experience. But how many black people were dished out after 1994 because they were told that they are uneducated? Given the experience they had to move out just because they were not educated. But now we are doing the same. We have taken back white people to ESCOM to run it because those who are educated, we are saying they don't have an experience. Now we must take back white people who used to run it with their grade 4 or no schooling at all, just because of certain aspects. That's why I'm saying we need to develop self-love and also be critical when we think and when we make policies. Sometimes I would say our countries where it is because maybe when we elect leaders, we elect people who are power hungry, whom are driven by their background to assume certain offices. Then when they get there, it becomes so comfortable. They become so comfortable, and they forget so easy about us. And as soon as we remove them out of those offices, they wake up from their dream.
Thing is, we'll never see who's power hungry, who's going there for the stomach, who's pushed by certain agendas to do what they do. But your last words, in terms of what role we can play to boost the economy.
I think we as individuals, the role that we can play that is critical is to hold our officials accountable. In that way, the economy, there's a term that we say in economy, that is what we call a crowding out effect. When you touch something, it moves something. You see, when we hold our officials accountable, what will happen? They'll be forced to do the right thing. And when they're doing the right thing, we'll all benefit in our economy in different ways. It can be whether jobs or whatsoever, but we will all come to a point where we will fully benefit. And even their structures will have to be innovative in terms of trying to make us to enjoy this democracy. I think that is even called for all structures, even what we were referring to earlier when you speak of young people not participating whatsoever. Our institution needs to know that it's no longer 1994. They need to come up with a new innovative way. They need to learn and relearn how to do things so that in a way of still exercising what we call a democracy.
Can you recommend 3 books for us that speaks to mindset?
I think there are 3 critical book I would say one should really look into. The Animal Farm
The Animal Farm
will make you understand what is happening.
in the world.
Then the second one
Mhm.
would be How to Think and Reason.
How to think and
And
reason.
Reason as an economic student in a South African perspective.
Okay.
It's by Frederick et al.
How to think and reason.
Yes,
Okay.
as an economic student. Then there's a third one I would say, it's by Prof. Sebe, Unmask the Political Messes. Really, it will summarize your 2 or 3 decades in democracy and also before democracy. It will just swing all those things and squash them together, and it will make you understand where do we come from, where are we moving to.
If you're speaking about Animal Farm, I think it's unfair that we've passed the elections. I think that is very much unfair because there's this, I don't know what they call it. Kunegama esisetshenziswa ukuthi all animals are equal, some are more equal than others. So that is the one thing that is normally that we are witnessing. But then again, speaks to the justice system, which covers the overall picture of the country and how we are living now. And you spoke about inequality, because I also think that everything that is happening, it's not just because they are happening. There's a system behind that is being pushed. So we have things like credit score, we have things like inflation. We just hear these good English words and then we assume that it's because we found them here, and then no one wants to know more about them. So to add on what you've been saying, my little 2 cent along or 8, I'm trying to close, guys, is that we need to understand and learn more. And then if we are learning and unlearning, it means that there's new information that you're going to get. There's information that you're going to have to take out and learn new things and accept where you have shortfalls. So thank you very much, Nyambose, for wasting on us and spending the day with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Nyama.
Thank you so much.
All right, catch us on the next one. Subscribe, comment, and share. This is Dialogue Corner. Ciao.